Great. Okay. Krista, take it away.
Yeah, I'll start our member comment period this morning. Welcome to our Opalco board meeting. As a reminder, we record these meetings and post them to our website. Members are invited to share comments or ask questions during this first section of the meeting, and we'll have time at the end for any follow-up questions. So if you want to make a comment, just raise your hand or make a comment into the chat and we can unmute you and you can make your comments. We'll have 3 minutes. The materials for today's meeting are posted online in our document library at opalco.com. They're posted each month in the week preceding a board meeting. So a couple of quick updates today. Happy Co-op Month. October is National Co-op Month. We're running a social media campaign to increase member engagement, and members can make comments and then they're entered into win a prize swag bag. And we've been getting lots of good engagement. We've been asking members questions like, when did you join the co-op? Or how do you get outage notifications? And it's been a really positive experience. So each week we're doing a different giveaway, and Joe's been leading that charge, and it's been really fun to see our members get involved and enjoy being appreciated and all of that. So thanks to our members. It's great to be a co-op. And we participated in some good events this month, including the Rotary Club on San Juan's The Future is Electric talk, which had about 120 people. And Jay Kimball gave a presentation on behalf of Opalco. And we also went to the Conservation District's Wildfire Mitigation Plan public engagement that they're doing right now. And so, yeah, we've been getting out into the community and talking with our members. So I'm going to see, are there any other comments or member comments at this time? All right. Well, I think that concludes that. We can go ahead and get started into our meeting here.
Great. Thank you, Krista. Appreciate it. Welcome, everybody. It's our Thursday, October 17th Board of Directors regular meeting. And we'll start off this morning. First thing, without objection, if possible, I'd like to propose a modification to the agenda and that we move the 2024 audit and tax engagement letter down to the back end of the thing so that we don't have to go in and out of executive session twice. And that would make it easier on people if the members are participating. So if that's all right, we'll do that. Second thing this morning is I'd like to get a motion to approve the items on the consent agenda. I'm assuming you've all read those.
Yes,
So moved.
so moved.
Mark got it.
I think Jerry got it.
Jerry got it. Mark is second.
Sure.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
And are there any objections or abstentions? And hearing none, that is accepted. Okay. Next item. Reminder, December 2024 meeting. Foster. Oh,
Let me up a little bit there.
Mhm.
Where is the item?
Sorry,
You need to scroll
down. My bookmarks weren't updated, so sorry.
Make the words go up.
So not here.
No, we're down at the reminder of the December 2024 meeting.
Okay.
There we go.
Sorry about that.
Let's say just a reminder, we sent an email out to the board of having the meeting a week earlier in December, as opposed to December 19th. We're going to be holding it. We had unanimous board to have it on December 12th at 8:30. So thank you for that. Appreciate it. Communication outline. I'll hand it over to you, Krista, when it comes time. But we're looking every year seems to have a theme as we're getting into our 2025 budget. It's really getting out there with our membership. It was really telling when we started to move forward with our Baylor Hill project. There was a lot of good questions being raised by our membership, and we took an opportunity to kind of see how engaged they've been. And the answer is, we've been providing reliable power for a long period of time. And the light switch works, but I think people have probably just relying on the board to, handle the book of business and so forth with Opalco. And I think it's time for us to engage. So what we're going to do is we're going to theme 2020, our 2025 budget around communications and reaching out to our membership in a bunch of very meaningful ways. You can kind of see we're going to start with a high level grassroots effort. And the picture that I like to paint in my own mind is, if you looked at Baylor Hill, there's a handful of people over at Baylor Hill on the, their neighbors in there, and they're wondering if this is something that we need to do to move forward. And the answer for us is yes, but are the members really up to speed on that? And the more you think about it, you're like, are they thinking that the Opalco got a good grant and we're just going to go out there and put something in a very pristine, pleasant area that we have that's aesthetically beautiful and so forth? Or is it because we need to plan for the energy future? And I think there's a little miscommunication going on between those two. And I kind of highlight that as what we're trying to resolve. So if we could get people to understand from a really high level perspective of why we're making the decisions we're making, why we're chasing the grant funds, why we're trying to embrace as much renewable generation locally as possible, then I think we'll be in a good situation to have a good dialogue with the membership. From my perspective, as long as the members understand the trade-offs, that we're pretty much agnostic on what we want to do. We want to really defer to the members and understand what their concerns are, address them as best we can, but also understand some of the challenges that we're facing. And as long as they know what we're going through, then I know we're going to be better off and make the right decisions on behalf of our membership. We see a lot of, I mentioned NIMBYism in this little write-up where it's the not in my backyard, or whether or not they embrace renewable generation or not. And I think that's part of the issue that we're trying to really understand is if we understand what the membership are thinking and they're understanding why we're doing what we do. We know the rates are going to go up, and we know that reliability is going down. And we're trying our best to not have blackouts or rolling blackouts during weather events going forward. And it seems more and more likely each and every day that we listen to the mainland grid that are struggling with the same issues. So as long as we know the trade-offs, that's it's going to be our big mission. As we get into the workshop and the sequence of events, you can kind of see the different things that we're going to be talking about with our membership that we have on the radar screen. We've been talking about our tidal project. We're talking about our community solar project. We always have candidate forums and use those opportunities to dialogue with the members about our energy future, annual meetings and varying rate workshops. We know we're going to go through a cost of service study analysis with our retail rates, and we'll engage our membership along that way as well. There's Island Way campaign that we're going forward with, and these are the topics that we're focusing on. Most of these things we know about it in-house, but we haven't really gotten into that member engagement and really making a push for that member engagement. We do a lot of town halls that have been very successful. Zoom has been one of our best friends. We were able to, without going around to different islands within our community, we're able to get more engagement with our members by getting on the Zoom call. So that's enabled us to add all of these topics that you're looking at in front of you to have those dialogues with our membership. So I'm really looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a really great year to get those grassroots efforts going and get a lot of member engagement so they understand why we do what we're doing. Chris, anything?
Foster, could I add something here
Sure.
before we get on too far into communications? I just
Right.
wanted to give a shout out. Krista brought up that there was the future of energy meeting that was held on San Juan Island last week with 120 people there. I mean, that is a large meeting from my experience with Opalco members. Because basically everyone there was an Opalco member, even though it was not a meeting organized by Opalco. And, I want to give a shout out to Jay for giving a very professional presentation, which covered a lot more than just the subject of electric vehicles, which was the main reason for this meeting. And we had the original founder of Tesla, who owns property on San Juan Island, there to talk about what he did in the future. But interestingly enough, when it came to questions from the floor, most of the questions were about Opalco and what we were doing, and wanting to know a lot more about not just tidal energy, but the solar projects and all of that, which I thought was a very positive response from our members. And if we can come up with other meetings which will generate that amount of interest for people to come there and spend their evening listening to these subjects, I think we should do a lot more by that. So I saw this first meeting, even though it was organized by Rotary, to be very, very beneficial to Apalco, and we should learn something from that.
Yeah, I think we did. In fact, there's a great picture. Why don't we roll to it real fast at the very, very, very end of it. Yeah, it wasn't put on by us. It was put on by the Rotary, and I heard the same thing, Jerry. I wasn't in attendance, but I know that you were and Jay did a great job presenting, and having those people really reach out, and it was all about Opalco was great to hear, and it really did lend itself into how Krista and Joe are compiling the communication plan. So pretty excited about that. There's a lot of people in that room, and it's great that we were at the center of attention, and they were nice enough to invite us too, which was really smart of them because there would have been a lot of unanswered questions, and we would have been notably absent there. So thank you for that, Jerry. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Go back up. Anything, Krista, that you want to highlight?
Well, I'm glad Jerry brought up the meeting. We really want to meet members where they're at this year. And so getting into those various civic clubs, homeowners meetings. I mean, you all are really active community members. So any groups you're involved in that could bring an Opalco speaker into, we would love to be there and answer people's questions. I think we've been doing a lot of these Island Way campaigns for the last 4 years, but I think it's such a complex issue that having conversations with our members is going to be the most impactful, and then they can have conversations with their friends. And so we're really looking forward to, now that COVID's fully over and we're past all of that. I love our Zoom meetings that we have, but I also think it's time to start getting in person more and getting people involved. And we're going to be doing some surveying for our members to see kind of their perspectives and figure out where we need to deepen our reach on all these things. So it's going to be an exciting year, and we're going to have our in-person annual meeting, which was a great feel-good event last year. We're going to have it on San Juan this year, so that's going to be a lot of fun. And I'm really hoping we're going to be selling our 28,000 shares for community solar on Baylor Hill. And that'll be a big team push. And we'll continue to communicate on these other exciting projects like the title project. So yeah, it's going to be a great year.
One of the things that we did in a prior year is, I forget how we organized it, Vince, but what we did is we had specific events that the board members said, hey, you know what, I'd like to hold one.
Sure.
And then we'll staff it, and you guys show up, and we have a really good dialogue. It was, before COVID, and like Krista just mentioned, having that one-on-one is kind of a change to us. And I'd love to get back into kind of reaching out your guys' individual circles as we get out there and have good conversations with the members. I don't know if you have any examples, Vince, but those were fun.
Yeah, there's lots of those. I might recommend another thing too, is to watch the meeting and look at the county website. They are starting to have a series of public meetings with respect to the comprehensive plan. And I think if we can make ourselves in attendance at those and ask some penetrating questions about things, make sure they're focused on going forward and not just doing the GMA checklist boxes, and really ask the tough questions. That's an opportunity to get some of these issues out in front of the county too.
Can I drill into that for just a little sidebar? Vince and I and Jay speak a lot about the comprehensive plan and how that really translates to Opalco is. I mean, we need to work together, community, all the different utilities, all the different, user groups with fire departments and sheriff. We need to know what those comprehensive plan components are. I'll give you the easy example: population. If we really think the population is going to grow, we better prepare. We better prepare as Opalco. We better prepare for load growth. If there's going to be water issues, well, again, we better prepare. If there's going to be shortfalls, if there's anything to do with desalination, we need to make sure those are cared for. Energy intensive projects like that, really get out in front of us, and the county should be leading the charge on that, on the comprehensive plan. And then the utility should act accordingly and make sure that we can provide those services. So historically, it's just been like Vince just said, a checkbox, but we got to play an active role, because everything we do in that comprehensive plan should dovetail into our planning documents. And so far it really hasn't, but this is our opportunity to really get out there and become part of that process again. So remember, these things only happen every 20 years or so. So we'll do that. Anyway, thanks for that, Vince.
Mhm.
Getting into the next topic. So the budget driver. So what we do, the
Hey,
month.
Foster, Wendy has her hand up.
Oh, Wendy, go ahead.
Yeah, so I wanted to just bring up on the community things, something that seems to be a really hot topic here in my part of Orcas Island right now among some of the lower income seniors is how they can convert to heat pumps and or heat pumps and solar, and how the Switch It Up program works. So we're getting into winter, and wood is hard to find and really expensive, and they're not chopping it themselves anymore. So I think it might be really useful to offer a session that's geared towards the member of, hey, how do I, switch from wood to a heat pump, and how would the Switch It Up program help me pay for it?
I know we've done, I don't know if it's recorded or not. We did just that, Wendy, as a matter of fact. It was very well attended. So we could resurrect that. That's a good thought. And just in the interim, know that I think we have one recorded, don't we, Krista?
Yeah, I think we have one recorded, and I do have one person that keeps commenting on all of our social media posts about communication that says senior lunch. So Joe and I definitely have it on our radar to be going to the senior lunches, and I like that idea to do one geared towards heat pumps or Switch It Up. Weatherization's key too, and BPA has some really great low income rebates that they've rolled out now. So
Right. And so I know that all that has gone around. Obviously we put in a heat pump and picked the whole thing up a few years ago, but I just think that sometimes people need Opalco to revisit it front and center with a clear, like, here's how I get that information.
You got it. I think that's a good idea. I also look forward to the one that I'm thinking of that was very successful was kind of a training. I don't know about you, but heat pumps are unique in that you got to maintain them. You got to understand how they work, how to program them really helps. And we actually had a technician from one of the installation companies that were in attendance, and they were really helpful. So anyway, good idea. Anything else, Wendy? Are you all good? Next on, so leading up in the 2025 budget. So we're going to do that next month in November. That's our typical budget month. We always like to do some of the really comprehensive analysis up front, so it gives us a little more chance to prepare for the budgetary side. The thing that we always like to get out in front of is the load forecast, right? How many kilowatt hours are we going to sell to the different rate classes in a given year? And it's always been precarious trying to predict the weather, but we're really weather focused. If we have a really warm winter, our revenue gets impacted. We collect less because we don't have this much heating load. If we see a colder winter in store for us, we need to take those factors so we don't over collect on them amongst the members. And it's amazing. We've been doing this for many years now, and it's amazing how much weather really impacts our financials. And I think we're getting pretty good at incorporating some of those current thoughts. I mean, the longer you get out, the more you can't predict the weather, obviously. And it's really interesting if you looked at our profile for revenue. So, since we're winter peaking because of the heating load, we get a lot of our revenue, November, December, January, and February. And so when you're going through an annual budget that starts in January, you're pretty good at predicting, the first 2 months of the year, but the last portion is where it gets a little bit more uncertain. And so that's why we're going through the analysis that we do. And predicting the weather pattern is, I don't know, it seems like the old Farmer's Almanac is just as good as it ever was. But we're getting pretty good at trying to work together with NOAA and paying a lot of attention to what their strategy is, certainly in the beginning portion of the year, which we're getting a little bit better at. We start with looking at what's going on in the oceans. It's the Oceanic Nino Index at ONI. I think everyone has seen these charts that have been on the board as we go through our budgetary forecast. And again, we're going to be including this information in the budget report as well. But you can kind of see that whether it's a warm ocean or a cold ocean has a direct impact on what the air temperature is. And I won't belabor it, but the predictions are, and NOAA gets together. It's kind of funny. They get together. I don't know. I think there's 20 plus experts on weather, and they get together and they have a consensus building time frame. And they all make a recommendation on what they forecast the future to be, and then they collectively put them together and they come up with a consensus, and it leads to this chart. I think the chart's really telling. I mean, it's labeled like you would expect. La Nina is the blue, and that's with the colder weather condition, and then El Nino is the red, and that's the warmer condition, neutral being obviously between the two. And so you see the predictions are looking like it gets into a little bit of a colder trend. I don't think it's going to be a very large La Nina. We're kind of looking at it as like certainly La Nina or neutral, but it's probably leaning a little bit more towards a little bit colder than we would normally anticipate. And the reason I say that is because you look at two factors. There's the ONI, which is the ocean, and then you look outside our Pacific. One is oceans in general, then it really narrows down into our typical area. And so when you look at both of those factors, if those are indicating an El Nino or a La Nina, it gets intensified. And lo and behold, this year, it looks like we got our PDO, Pacific Decadal Oscillation, is predicting a La Nina situation as well. Not a strong one, but when you combine the two, that's fairly noteworthy. Let's keep going. This is a really complex chart, but I really like it. Just bear with me. The top portion is the kilowatt hour purchase that we go through, and then what you do is we're tracking whether it's an El Nino or a La Nina condition through those ONI and PDO topics that we just went through. So you can kind of see based on the labeling whether it's a warmer or a colder kind of scenario. Well, the one that was most notable that I recall was back in 2015, 2016, even spilled into prior to that in 2014. We got a big El Nino condition, and it's amazing how that impacted us. We did not have nearly the sales that we would expect because of that warmer condition, and people were not heating their homes. So we're really trying to predict those big swings, whether they're above the line or whether they're below the zero line. So I'm looking at the complicated chart with a lot of information below. So if it's above the line, then you're going to be seeing red. If it's below, you're going to be seeing blue. That corresponds with El Nino, La Nina. And remember, based on those weather predictions from NOAA, it looks like we're looking at a more of a colder situation going forward, which is good for us. Now that basically says that we're probably looking like we're going to be closing this year, 2024, and then starting next year in that condition. I guess all indicators are it's kind of short-term in nature. In the summertime, it's kind of business as usual for us. We're seeing a little bit more load because of people spending more time here since the pandemic. But you don't see a lot of weather condition changes from year to year in the summertime. It's all about, the November, December, January, February timeframes. Let's keep going. You look at purchased and sold, and the difference between is really line loss associated with a grid system. For instance, when you purchase the power and you sell it, you have a slightly less. That's a normal line loss that you would see when you heat up a transformer. That heat creates a loss associated with it. So they track fairly well. In our co-op, we're usually seeing about a 6% line loss, which is pretty darn good. And if it goes up into above tens is where we got to be a little bit more concerned. The trends that we're looking at right now are really consistent with what we're anticipated in a La Nina, El Nino scenario. I always look at it like this. We always sell 200 million kilowatt hours, 200 million. It's the difference between the 200 million and, the 240 million that makes or breaks our economics. And it's really associated with the weather of the El Nino, which is the 200-ish, or the La Nina, which gets closer to the 240 million kilowatt hours. So I think we're setting ourselves up pretty good for a load forecast for 2025. Let's keep going down.
Foster, got a question.
Sure.
What is our tier one peak or maximum or whatever the BPA has set for us? Something like 210. What do you remember what the number is?
Are you talking about what our slice of the river system is like 20, a little under 25 megawatts?
Well, no,
Megawatt.
it,
Are you just talking about our system peak?
they sell us tier one up to a certain point, after which we go into tier two. What is the dividing line?
Yeah, that's really it goes back into that number I just referenced. It's the 24 point something average megawatts that we
Okay.
get. Anything above that. I don't know if it's broken down differently on a monthly basis. Do you have any input on that, Russell?
Sorry about that. Okay. Camera's not working. There it is.
Yeah.
So, sorry, state the question again, please.
Yep. It's our tier one versus tier two. I mean, at some point, Bonneville says you've met your tier one peak, and I don't know. I think there's a seasonality to that, but I think it's somewhere around 210,000 megawatt hours per year, and everything above that then goes to the tier two. And BPA says you can either purchase it yourself or we'll sell it to you.
It's decently complex, so we dip into it a little bit here and there. We have contractual obligations once we are predicted to be above our average high water mark. And then, and so we're obligated for purchases, but we may get sales if we don't use those. So the net effect, when there was a poor prediction from BPA, was like, I think it was like $20,000 in that given year, but that's just because there was a poor prediction from
Yep.
BPA.
Yep.
So coming up here, in quite some years, it's going to be quite some years still. So we're still predicted to be, I think it's 3 years at the minimum, to be above that high water mark.
Mhm.
So we'll get into those obligated costs to go get resources on the market. Then it's based on our shape profile and our purchases in the contract, and it's deep in those levels. So each month we have so many kilowatt hours that we can use in high load hours and low load hours, and
Mhm.
anything above those we pay for it. So it's not really based right now on time of day. 2028, we'll see.
Got it. Okay.
So all of our billing determinants that we have are, I mean, there's like Russell just went through, we have load shaping, we have different
Mhm.
demand charges and so forth. It's not really broken down into you hit your mark necessarily. There are some heavy load hours and light load hours and some other things that go along with it. I can tell you in general, maybe that's the way to do it. And I'll do some more homework and have a better answer for you next time, Vince.
Yeah, thanks. My point is that at some point in the future, when this load forecast is done out there, all increasing load going forward is going to be purchased from the market, either through PNGC or from BPA or whatever. And those dollars spent out there are going to be much more dear than the ones we got right now.
Yeah, I guess the way to frame it up for everybody to look at is we're just at the threshold. I think Russell alluded to it pretty well. We're just at the threshold right now of hitting the maximum amount of the cheaper power we have. We call that tier one power.
Right.
And that's our preferential power out of the Bonneville Dam system. That's our slice of the dam, if you will, that utilities in this region, consumer owns, get preferential treatment. Once you go above that power, then you have to go out to the market, and that's where you get tier two power that's based on market values that gets really expensive. So the further we get into the tier two, obviously the more percentages is going to be at the high cost power rather than the low. And that's what we're tracking to right now. So right now, where the majority of our load is within our tier one, we'll call it. Every once in a while, though, if it gets cold, we'll break that ceiling. If it gets really cold, we'll have a cold snap. Then we'll go above and beyond that. What Bonneville does is they buy the tier two power at that stage as a shaping charge. It's something that's more temporary condition that shows up, and then you get charged in that component of their bill. So you're never out of the woods if it gets really cold or so forth. You're any allocation that's above what they've assumed over the last 10 years is what you get credit for. Bonneville does an interesting thing. They do a big giant, like we have our facility charge and then we have our kilowatt hour charge. What Bonneville does is they have a extremely large facility charge, or the base rate. They
Mhm.
call it a composite rate. And then what they do is they make adjustments to that composite rate as they go through the years, and that's what translates to your bill. And then if you exceed whatever that is, they'll go to the market above and beyond that to buy extra power for you if they need to supply it. We're known as a load following utility. So it happens fairly automatically. We just go through our normal day. If it gets really cold, they go out to the market and then we see it on our bill.
The reason I'm bringing this up is that I think, 2025 is not going to be a bad thing, but going forward, and as we get close to the new contract with BPA, what we're seeing out there is we get power from them on an average of something like $42 a megawatt hour. I think it is. It's 30 something plus there's a transmission stuff. So I think it kind of looks like 42 on average for the year. So, and we know that the mandates that we're getting out of the state. So, you're looking at Centralia TransAlta shutting down in 2025. That's 750 megawatts of firm power that's disappearing. And you could see that in the wintertime, when we had the January cold snap and the July problem when the wind disappeared, you were seeing market prices of like $800 a megawatt hour for those in there. And we're going to start tickling up against those things. And contrary to popular belief, you can read it all the time. And wind and solar are so cheap. It's like, remember back in the nuclear days, it was so cheap we don't even need to meter it. Well, people keep saying that about wind and solar, but the problem is we've been watching what, for example, Puget Sound Energy is doing, and they're signing contracts, power purchase agreement contracts for 2025 and beyond to replace the coal, and they're tickling $55 and $60 a megawatt hour for battery-backed solar and battery-backed wind. So, I'm not seeing any trend out there on the horizon that indicates that power in the Pacific Northwest is going to be cheaper. On the contrary, it's going to be going up.
It's going to be going up. We know that Bonneville's been very clear. They're not building new resources. The hydro system's not expanding. They're not actually going to go and build new resources for generation at all. What they're going to do is they're going to go to the market, and the market is challenged right now because of the things that we're experiencing, the NIMBYism, right? Getting the permits to build new generation are becoming harder and harder to achieve, and therefore we're looking at if the industry starts shutting down more and more coal plants and getting rid of natural gas like there with Centralia and CETA in Washington State, then we're up for a reliability issue in a big way. For us, I think it's going to translate to, weather events going forward. It's going to be, a learning curve for us, to say the least, when that happens. And that's part of our communication plan that we're trying to get in front of everybody. Go ahead.
That's a good question. So if we get a penalty from Bonneville, or we're actually buying from the market, do we recover that through the ECA?
So the ECA is there for a power, like a weather event, right? And now remember, we buy power. I'm going to use a different number than Vince, but it's close. We buy power for 4.5 cents because we go through PNGC, and then we sell it for 12.5 cents. The difference between those two numbers is a fixed cost. So the ECA, Brian, collects the power portion, but not the additional cost that you would need for the fixed related, if that makes sense.
Right. Okay. We had a conversation about that.
Yeah, so we get back about a third of what we were going to get, that ultimately hits us.
I had questioned some board members last week, so I think that's good to know.
Yeah.
Now,
The ECA you guys put in place was brilliant. Because what it does is it gets us the loan covenants that we have with RUS, CoBank, and CFC are met easily with that 1/3 profile that we get back. So it's not perfect, but it gets us to the point where we don't have to make any rash decisions with rate structures at that stage.
can I go ahead and address the comment or the question in the chat? It would be really simple.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
So it's not quite so easy as to just say colder weather equals a higher wholesale cost. It just depends on how that colder weather happens. Say in January we get 2 weeks of just below 30 degrees. That actually doesn't reflect that poorly in our contract as far as a spike in that. If it happens on a single day, that's where the demand hits. So we may get demand, but it's about sustained demand over time, which eats away at our demand charge and puts it back into the high load hours and gives us an average lower cost for that given month. So there's just a lot of dynamics in that BPA contract, and it's just not there's a very gray answer always.
So Chris, let me try to take a run at that one as well. Yes, you're absolutely right. We collect more revenue. That's a given. If we have a colder winter time, but we also get a bigger power bill. But those are, one of them is load and one of them is providing that through Bonneville. I would say, it depends on how big and extreme and the duration of the cold snap to find out, whether or not the additional revenue collected exceeds the peak charge that we get from Bonneville. Typically, yes, we'll get more revenue than we would have to pay off for the power side of the Bonneville charge. I think if I can jump back into the chart.
Yep.
So where we are, what we've done is we've been tracking these over the years, and it been very helpful for us to kind of figure out the conditions. I like this chart. It really brings home the different years, and they're really unique, and they're not necessarily a weather trend the way it occurs. You may have a 1 year really cold, and then it flips over pretty quick. Maybe there's a 3 year duration most in a trend, but usually that we've seen in the past, and you could see the dates here. These are the dates where you start to see whether 1 year was, what each year was. Now you see 2014 was a start of one, 15 and 16. Very different. And then it flipped over to, go find 2017. And then you're kind of going, wow, that was a big change from 2016 to 17. So they really can be pretty dramatic swings from year over year. What we're doing is we're plotting projected 2024. So we're looking at the end of this year, projecting to be in the 235 range is what we're looking at. So we're kind of in the middle. And I think that's pretty consistent with what we're forecasting in 2025 for our budgetary numbers.
Buster, can I comment on this chart for a moment?
Always.
We could go back. Like you, I've always found this pretty educational, but really, it's a scatter graph. I don't know why we put that dotted line through there, because it really doesn't represent any true reality at all. But as we're looking, at this for budgetary purposes, would it not be sensible to have a parallel chart to this one, rather than the y-axis being the annual kilowatt hours purchased? If we just put in our total cost of power there, because that's the thing we're really concerned about at the end of the day. And
be careful with that, because what you're doing is you're going to sell a lot less kilowatt hours, so therefore your cost per kilowatt hour is going to go up. So I mean, as long as we understand what the numbers represent, it's fair to plot them. It is just a scatter graph. There's no question about it. But it gives you an idea of what we like about it is we go and we look at the weather pattern, and then we come back in and we pick the years that are in a typical weather pattern that we're suggesting. And then we start doing our analysis based on that, and that's how we back into the kilowatt hours that we're going to be selling for the year. And we break them down into revenue classes and so forth. So it's really helpful to look at it this way.
Yeah, it's just not a graph that we can really project from.
I think
the dollars that we're spending, include any demand charges and these other things, which may be helpful for looking at the extremes of strong El Nino and a strong La Nina.
Yeah, well, I guess the takeaway is why don't we put our heads together a little bit, Jerry? I like where you're going with it. Any more visibility or clarity that we can have, and that's always the best. I know that when we look at this historically, this is how we arrive at what our estimations are, and then this leads into our budget so we can start the overall process. In terms of the cost per hour, we also got to be looking at the Bonneville, the new contract, and what those billing determinants are adjusted to in a 2-year rate period swing, because that's going to have a big impact on the price of power as well. And it's not really as predictive as you would think.
No, I recognize there are a lot of variables involved here. I just think it might be worthy of looking at this and see if we see slightly different trends built in there that we need to take notice of, because it refers to total dollars that we're going to be expending.
Yeah, good thoughts. I like where you're going with it. Let's compare notes a little bit afterwards.
Okay.
One interesting reference point we learned last week was the PNUCC Northwest Regional Forecast was revised upwards from 24% load growth to 30% minimum load growth over the next 10 years. So you look at the regional trends in terms of scarcity and maybe not significant new generating or transmission resources. It's not a story for next year's budget, but boy, looking ahead, year after year for 10 years, you have to see where costs are going to escalate significantly.
Yeah, we're doing a lot of that forward thinking stuff at PNGC, and I think you saw it from going down there. How it generates locally is huge too for us. We're going to be doing in 2025, we're going to be doing a load forecast where we're going to get into some of those details, because as we're getting into that higher price power and those percentages become larger and larger as we go, that's going to be essential for us to figure out. And the danger is that we as a region don't have enough power. And that's what the indicators are. And what you're saying, Tom, leads to the loss of load probability if we have load growth and we don't have enough generation to replace it. It's kind of a scary little scenario we're entering.
Yes, it is.
Yep. Thanks for that. Any other questions on the forecasting side? Good thoughts. Appreciate it, Jerry. Anything out there? Is there anything? I haven't really been tracking the chat very well. Is there anything out there, Vince?
Oh, I'm just looking here. Nothing critical. So,
okay. Another budgetary. I want to understand how the budget works. We do a really good job on the budget. I got to give Nancy a shout out, Travis a shout out, and Michelle does some really great work for staff to come up with our budget. What we do with the most important components of our budget is we break them out, right? So we know our budget's 1/3 power, 1/3 labor, and 1/3, paying back for infrastructure and, everything else. And what we do is the bigger components we break out individually. We analyze them on their merits, and then we weave them back into the next year's budget. What that translates is we look at, we work with PNGC, we work with Bonneville to figure out what the estimated power costs are going to be, and looking at the bill, determinants. We're looking at, PUCC as a indicator and so forth. And then we break out labor. What we do is we actually pull it out of our numbers, adjust it for labor rate increases according to our union contract, as well as any step increases for people that are getting, been longer in their positions, and any adds or subtracts from our labor. Then we actually plug those back in. But there's the ancillary things. By the way, we lock in our loans, so those are always, given what the assumptions are. It's the ancillary things that are that we want to make sure that we have that hit the general inflation rate. And so I don't want you to think that everything just goes up by 5%, because it doesn't remotely. It's only the miscellaneous things that we have on the radar screen. But I look at the God, it's so funny. I go out there and I look at the estimations and forecasts for inflation rates, and they're all over the map. And I think a lot of it has to do with the election cycle. And it's not a big driver within our budget, but it's meaningful enough for us to pull it out and do an analysis on what the labor department says about where we are with inflation. And I think based on where we are and the situation, the economy, and so forth, just putting in a general 5% inflation factor in there for those miscellaneous topics is appropriate. I don't know if anyone has any other wisdom that goes along with it, but it's a good budget assumption to cross off now as we lead into November. Move on. And we're done with the kind of preparing for the budgetary side, and then we'll jump into that with both feet for the November meeting. So stay tuned for that. We're working hard right now behind the scenes, estimating what our 2025 budget. It looks a lot better once you get the power organized, and if you're a neutral situation to a La Nina, where we can breathe a little bit easier and don't anticipate what we've been saying for the last 5 years is that we're looking at a 6% rate increase. I don't think that's going to be changing dramatically. I think it's going to be consistent with what we projected last year, based on the fact that we're still in a more of a neutral revenue position with the amount of kilowatt hours we sell. So anyway, I think we breathe easy now, and then we'll review it again in November. With that, the dashboards. Here's our just the general report that we have. Just know that we have some really good resources available if you're ever curious. Safety is always gigantic. We go through. We went through some grounding training this month. I always like to highlight that because we spend a good amount of time making sure that our crews are safe, and I always want to make sure I highlight that, especially within our board's discussion. Baylor Hill, I had a
Foster, question on safety issue. Do you again, I've been around a long time, can somewhere dig up what was the record for the without a lost time accident hours peak before we had that one event a few years back?
Nancy, where was it? I bet you Nancy could pull that up.
Yeah,
I
think
I will, but the hours that are represented right now are the
Yeah.
highest.
that's what I thought. I thought this is
No, this
congratulations.
is higher, yeah.
Yeah, this is a record.
But I will find that little tidbit out and put it in the
Yeah.
chat.
That's an important thing to point out because it's never been better than this.
Never been better.
Background, there was, we had a person it was some lost time hours from a safety incident that we had years ago. And I would say that, boy, that was awakening for us. And, talking about safety and how important everything is, that wake up call is translated to the numbers you see today. And we use that every safety meeting I can think of. I kind of see that thread in there, and it gets people more focused, or as an organization, even more in tune to our safety programs. We got a really good one going with the Northwest Safety Services, and I think we're doing a really good job. And most importantly, everybody in our organization, from top down, you guys included, take it extremely serious, and we do a very admirable job tracking that. I know it's just one line item on the board report, but there's a lot of effort behind that, and congratulate the organization. Baylor Hill, we just got an email again. It was a delay email, and we're still waiting for DCD within San Juan County to come up with our hearing date for a hearing examiner. We go through a CUP process. We've known from the beginning. Background that drives me crazy. I just sent an email back to the county and said, we're starting to tickle losing grants if we're not careful, and they're meaningful. It's up to like $6 million is what we're, could potentially be, because of all the delays that we're looking at, could potentially be on the table that we lose. And those are member funds. Those are member low income solar funds. And remember, when we went through this, it wasn't just an arbitrary, let's go buy property and build community solar. We actually worked with, I'll just remind everybody, we worked with the county. We did a pre-permit development process that in advance of buying the property, we see the list of things to do and not to do. And as long as you follow the thoughts of the pre-development permitting process, the expectation is that you're good to go and you can move forward with your project. And what we've seen throughout this process is not that. It's really frustrating for us, but we'll see. I haven't heard back from my email that I sent to the new county manager, and also included some other people on that. So I hope to hear back today or tomorrow, and I'll forward that response to the group. Rosario Title, this is our investigation into title, which is just an investigation at this point. I don't want to overstate that, so people understand that we're at the beginning stages. We need to prove up the merits of title. It has the benefits are, you're going to receive title generation when the sun's down, and in times when solar or wind may not producing. So there's good reason for us to explore it. And that's what we're doing right now. We still are in the midst of it, pretty getting closer to put a testing unit in the water, and we'll have some good information once that testing equipment is used to actually look through the tidal flows that we're looking at. Grants, anything you want to touch on grants wise? These are pretty standard, Russell.
No, we've got a couple we're gonna file for coming up here, but as far as we're waiting on a lot of, or one to get a response back on. I'm gonna share something real quick. Just as, this is the equipment that's sitting in the water right now.
Cool.
It was deployed on October 1st and 2nd. That starts our 3-month window. So there's the Sea Spider here, which is anchored in one area that's closer to the shore. This is the mid-water water column unit to measure the flow rates at the mid of the turbine, where the turbine would be planned to be. And then at request of some of the agencies and other groups that we work with from a regulatory standpoint, we were asked to put a marking buoy. Now this unit right here is at roughly 45 meters deep in the water. So chance of a collision is near zero. So that's the need for the buoy is very little, but it was still requested, so we do.
Appreciate the name of Sea Spider. Love that one.
That's cool.
I'm trying to find, here's a couple of it's just fun stuff to, hopefully you can see this update with the charts. So this kind of shows relative to where the shore was. There was multiple planned areas. UW had to go, they did a pre-survey, day of survey with some equipment out of the back of their boat to measure several points to see where the best is. Because as these tides are great, there's back eddies that happen that can disturb the equipment. And so we had to get out of the back eddies, make sure we're in the right spot. So as we said, the Sea Spiders in the mid here. This blue one here is that mid-water column, and then here is the buoy. The reason they're separate is so they're signaling and back to UW, and measurement signaling does not disturb each other. We don't need cross interference. These cones are kind of where they're measuring in the column. So that mid-water unit, the blue, this blue circle, and the cone underneath it, that's kind of the swing of the unit as the tide goes. Sea Spider being at the seafloor itself is there is no swing, but it does have a cone of measurement as it goes to the surface. And the reason there's 2 units is so that we can make sure we get kind of redundant measurements, but the most important one is that mid-water unit. And then the buoy has its largest swing. We put it further out so that most vessels will stay away from the area in its entirety. But it's a pretty tight area. It's hard to depict it in things like this.
Well, what's the squiggle on the left?
It's the shoreline, I think.
Oh, this black is the depicting the sea floor, and then this what is that?
That's the one.
Is the shoreline. That's correct.
Okay.
And so you can see the latitude markers here and the depth markers here as far as how deep it is. And then just up here, this was in their pre-surveys, is to just showing the flows. There's much greater flows as they flow south at this particular point. You can kind of see some of these back eddies off to the shoreline. That's why these got pushed out a little bit more. Lighter flows during the flood. Good flows during the ebb. Slightly lighter during the flood, but these are measured at near surface level and from the equipment of the boat day before. These are not indicative of the actual flows at peak time because we weren't at a peak tide that day. They did measure that at peak of that particular day, but it wasn't at a we'll call it a severe ebb or flood.
what what magnitude are the arrows you're showing here? Are they less than 5 knots?
Yes, they're less than 5 knots in this particular depiction. The point of these is to make sure that we stay out of the ebb. I mean, the back eddies. It wasn't really to concern ourselves with the flows since we weren't at a high flow time, but Jim from UW said that these were very promising figures as far as seeing these at the time. So it did match the UW modeling for their predicted modeling for that date time within a reasonable margin of error. So we're very confident in the modeling that UW's done to this point.
Good, good.
Great stuff. Thanks, Russell.
Krista, back to your share.
Super.
So on the first grant, we met someone nice down at our PNGC meeting. I think it was Taniqua from DOE. They sent her a little email. We submitted this a while ago and just haven't heard back. They say they go through their award reviews every Wednesday. So I was kind of hopeful that maybe with a contact of DOE, we would be on a Wednesday notification. So stay tuned on that. We still don't know exactly what it is. There's a new grant coming up that we know about through DOE. It's called an ERA grant. It's up to $15 million. They're going to be awarding 20 to 50 of those type of grants to different utilities. So excited about that one. That's going to be pretty noteworthy. We're going to put in for that one in various ways, both in our community as well as Opalco. So that's real great. We list our title pilot grant here as number 2 on the list. And then we have some of the awards that we've received over the years.
Also, could you address the matching components and how we're going to fund those?
Okay, why don't we go back up to the top? So if we go through, probably the most important grant application we have by bar none for our co-op to save our membership is a resilient submarine cable. If it turns out that we have to buy the next submarine cable that's currently provided by Bonneville, has 2 in the water that we benefit from. If we've heard statements from Bonneville that may be the case. If that is, then that one's crucial for us. How would we match it? I think what we would do is we would look to our financials and then go to RUF, see the best approach for us to move forward with. When you have a big project like that, the matching component is always the hardest thing to do. DOE has these rules, like the next grant, that ERA grant that they referenced, had a component for not stacking grants or not stacking loans to it. This was a previous grant under the GRIP program, had a little bit different strings to it. So I think the matching components, we want to whittle that down, where a co-op, usually you get higher points. For us, coming up with $33 million, it's going to be a heavy lift. But we're going to have to, if we got awarded $66 million, we're going to have to come up with the funds to do this project. That's the reason that it's so important for us to keep our equity position as high as we can keep it, so we could afford some matching funds with these grants.
Hey, Foster, this is Joel. Have you looked at the tax credit side on the subsea cable? Is this something that we might be able to get some tax credit help on?
There could be some wins with our subsidiary because they're the taxable entity. Right now, we haven't really done any research until we get the go-ahead with DOE. Once we get noticed on the award, then we're going to start looking for alternatives. I know we can always rely on CFC for matching components as well. So we have the ability to do the matching. There's different levels of affordability that we need to take into consideration for that grant. I think all the rest of the other matchings that we have to play out based on the merits of the project. For instance, title right now is we we originally said our estimate was a lot higher than what they put down on here. And I think the grant awards have been whittled down by DOE. And one of the things that we've been doing is talking to DOE that says, hey, we're not going to be able to move forward unless there's a lot of grant assistance to improve the economics of the project. And I think they're in the process of considering how to address that, because I think a lot of people are in that same category, and inflation rates have gone up across the region. And DOE is looking for different approaches. I was a little surprised that they called out no stacking allowed in the next ERA grant, because they are aware that people are struggling with that component of the matching side. But I know that that's the reason that we're, partners up with CFC, our lender.
We did some in the title grant and the existing grants we have, that would be Baylor Hill Battery and the solar as separate pieces. They are eligible for the ITC, but there's a timing component. How long does the ITC stick around, and when will somebody allow us to actually do the project? So that's just something I wouldn't bank on.
So what we do with the investment tax credit, that's ITC that Russell just went through. What we do is we determine whether or not we can afford it going forward, and then there's a couple little topics. They're not that meaningful, but they could provide some additional financial assistance for our members too, for the ITCs. And what you do is you submit the grant, and then you start chasing the ITCs. There's no guarantee that you're going to get them, but if you do, it's a great windfall. Good question.
So what I hear you saying here, Pastor, is that these matching components will have to be built into our budget, either as increased debt to be paid off in the future, or increased rates to generate more revenue to meet the current portion of these matching dollars. Is that correct?
You bet. Or we decide not to go forward with them.
Yeah, obviously. If the impact is too great, yes, we're forced into that decision as well.
Yeah, the way that I would say that, I don't know, think about your, a home mortgage. You're going to get an additional loan on your home, then obviously your rates are going to go up. So rates are going to go up to cover the debt service component of that, of those matching funds, is the way they'll look at it.
Right. It's not one or the other. You have to do both.
Yeah.
You have to borrow, and then we have to have more money to pay it back.
Yeah. It's really, the real impact is paying back the debt service.
So we need to make sure that this is included in our communications, because it's a question that's going to come up always. How the heck are we going to pay for all this?
Right. That's always been on our radar screen. We haven't received this yet. So we haven't really gotten to the details yet. Once, we don't have the staff time to go out and start detailing this if we're not going to get it anyway. So we're going to, we know the options are out there. They're high level at this stage, but we'll need to bring them down to the project level when it's time.
Okay, thank you.
This is the budget track going forward for this is through 2024. If you projected using actuals through September and then budgetary figures going forward to finish the year, this is what we're projected to finish the year. We're having a great year. If I had to replicate any year, 2024 would be the one I'd choose. You can see that in terms of the revenue that we're generating. Same thing with our equity going up. Also, no, we're going to start breaking out equity a little bit. We're spending a lot of money on our Switch It Up program, which is fantastic, our member relending program. And we're seeing a lot of people invest in solar, for instance. It's great to see, but that does impact our equity percentage. So what we're going to do is I'm going to track it two ways, before Switch It Up and then after Switch It Up, so you can see the impact of what we're doing in a meaningful way, trying to keep our equity position up, which includes Switch It Up. And those are the ones that our lender needs to look at. So just know that our Switch It Up impacts our equity. That's going to impact our borrowing. So Jerry, a further answer to your question is, what are we able to borrow? And I'd say once you get down into the 30% equity range is where you're gonna RUS will let you kind of bridge that or go below that for a temporary period of time if you have good rational thought for it. It would if we went forward with the submarine cable.
Well, I mean, these numbers are very encouraging, frankly, for putting money aside here, essentially for the future.
Right. Our ECA is doing great. Again, this is the kind of the true up mechanism that we have in place in our billing system to catch any anomalies. We want to make sure that we don't over collect revenue from the members when we don't need it. And we want to make sure that we don't under collect as well. We really want to hit it on the dot. And our ECA provides a little bit of a cushion for that and trues it up to about a third of what the impact, either high or low, would be. The heating degree days we're tracking to, you can go down a little bit so you see the whole chart. So we're tracking to a little bit warmer. In the summertime, remember we talked about heating degree days, it doesn't really fluctuate that much. And this has to do with our kilowatt hour sales too. We're pretty stable when it comes to the summer months. It's those winter months where we get a lot of variation, a lot of fluctuations. And we've taken into consideration on our last discussion for load. And now we're going to go and see the same chart. So I'm not going to spend any time on them, but these are all that last one was the load growth, indicating that La Nina was coming our way a little bit. Energy assistance funding, love these graphs. These are really great to be a co-op. I always say it every time. It's because I'm so proud of Opalco for really helping out our members in need, and this goes to show how much we do. Switch it up funds. I'd love the chart. I mean, look at this. When you look at solar, I always like to do that. It's really been awesome to watch, right? If you take two numbers, solar plus storage and solar together, that's the highest component that we have. We've always been historically heat pumps, which is 6.8 million. And we're in the 7 range now. So we're even higher on the solar side. So we do a lot of rooftop solar support. I know there was some discussion, amongst our membership about, our need to get utility scale solar. Let's suffice it to say, we are providing the lending and the most needed component to our membership, which is Switch It Up capital funds for embracing solar. So I'm really excited to see that number. Stay tuned on that. I think it's going to get better since we opened it up to new construction. Here's some more of our energy saving rebates that we have. So that's good. We're up to over 400 connections now, 800 connections into solar for 806, which is pretty neat to see. And then we have our community solar, the benefits paid to our members from Decatur and others. We went through communications. High marks to Krista and Joe. It's been really fun to see us evolve and really getting kind of new thoughts out there with the two of them about how to communicate best with Opalco. I think you guys have seen the Rule Light stuff with Joe, and well done, Joe. Thanks for being part of our team. We go through our analytics, which are good, and you might want to go up a little bit. I don't know if Krista, I don't know if you want to talk about the bullets above that, even before the stats for you go up a little bit more. Yeah, right there, those bullets. I don't know if you want to touch on those, Krista, but we've been doing a lot of progress. We see it in Facebook and Instagram, and really getting out there in the members. And I think you guys see it more than ever before about how much we're engaging with our members on varying different communication pipelines and methodology, because nobody communicates in the same fashion anymore. But our numbers are increasing. We're being more and more active as we go, and our membership's evolving pretty dramatically too along social media. It's kind of fun to see. I think the pandemic really switched everybody's gears over to being a little bit more computer oriented. With the website analytics, here's the summary that you've seen. You used to see these things all the time, but you can go down to the below chart. You can see the some of the high level views of what we're doing. A lot more. The one that was pointed out to me by Krista earlier was Spanish language transition or translation pages that we have. So we're getting, we're getting more in the need of being a community that's embracing, more DEI kind of topics, which goes into our grant applications in a positive way. So we're pointing all these different aspects out to our evolution of our community, which is good. Anything you want to touch on, Krista or Joe?
Yeah, we were just looking at we're starting to look at our social media a little more just to see, and all of our analytics, we've got several different platforms. We just highlighted Instagram and Facebook, but to just see what is engaging our members more so we can see what really interests them and where they're at so that we can start getting more information down those channels. So that's kind of how we're using this information to analyze it and get there. And I was
Okay.
really impressed by that Spanish language too. We made that change in last spring, and yeah, to have 4,000 views, and a lot of them were like when we gave out the energy credit, people were translating that page into Spanish, and so yeah, it's really interesting to see that those are successful.
We were going through, I know when we were at our PNGC meeting, we spent some time, Wendy did a grant application for another entity before she joined the board and mentioned some of those same statistics. So it was really good timing for us to get some of her thoughts and then explore our data as well. So we're going to update our community benefits plan for the next grant application. Should be good enhancement. Co-op month. And then there's the Rock Island snapshot. And with that, Vince, I don't know if you want to take a break and then come back in executive.
I think we got some people that would like to ask some questions. So I'd like to, Krista, if you can moderate that, we can open that up.
Yeah, let's, I think, Sean, you wanted to make some member comments. So if you want to, we can help unmute you here. So yeah, feel free to open that. Let me stop sharing here.
Thank you for the opportunity to comment. Chris and I submitted a comment letter. But also would like to
Hey, Sean, your microphone's cutting out every like 10 words or something. So I don't know if you have a non-Bluetooth or something.
Is that better? Is that better?
That's better. Yeah, I thought that should be
okay.
better.
Yeah, sorry, I pushed this out of the way. So I guess maybe some of you might have seen the comment letter that I shared. So yeah, Chris and I have comments on 3 main areas. The first one is on demand charge. We were very encouraged to see demand charge discussion, as a way to try to recover fixed costs in a more equitable way. Currently, yeah, I was really surprised to see this when Foster shared the information. So top 10 residential customers consume as much peak demand power as the bottom 19%, or 2,300 something customers. Of course, this is only during that day when the cold snap happened on January 12th this year. And because right now the only fixed charge on the bill is the access charge, so this leads to a very unequal treatment in terms of, like there's a huge gap between the fixed cost that top users pay and the actual cost that they actually imposed on the system. So I just would like to encourage OPALCO to address this deep inequality as fast as possible. I wonder if it would be possible for OPALCO to consider imposing some kind of demand charge to address this problem right away, maybe even at the beginning of next year. So that's first that related to demand charge. And the next one is about wood heat. Just under this new reality where energy is no longer abundant and high heating load can lead to a lot more expensive power purchase from the spot market. Wood heat should really be considered a friend, not a foe. It is a carbon-free source, so I hope that OPALCO will reconsider paying people $1,500 to move away from wood heat and add more load to our anticipated growing energy deficit, in the future. And the third one is related to solar. OPALCO is really concerned about the upcoming energy deficit and has talked a lot about solar, community solar and tidal. However, I feel that the rooftop solar could also be part of the solution. It's like low-hanging fruit, can cut through the NIMBYism or permitting difficulties, and we really need all members to help contribute. So I feel like rooftop solar can play a lot more role in contributing towards the demand growth. NREL, National Renewable Energy Lab, has estimated that rooftop solar can contribute around 27% of the sales volume in Washington state. So this means we can rely a lot more on members to help OPALCO solve the anticipated power deficits. And even though solar can produce, production in wintertime is small, but every kilowatt hour will count, because in a situation where energy deficits, in a situation of energy deficit, it means the rooftop solar will help OPALCO avoid, $800 or $1,000 per megawatt hour electricity from the spot market during cold snaps. And our tariff rate and solar purchase rate can be designed to incentivize battery installation or load behavior that's consistent with energy availability. So we have proposed some suggestions on OPALCO could do more to facilitate more rooftop solar investments, as detailed in the comment letter for your consideration. So I just would like OPALCO to take in the some of the suggestion, and would love to be in a conversation, and we'll continue to see what OPALCO does. Thank you so much.
Thank you, John. Appreciate that.
So, John, just so you know, we distributed it to all the board members, so thank you for that. Stay tuned. We're going to be doing a pretty detailed analysis throughout 2025, and look forward to a lot of member engagement, including yours. And really, it's a struggle. I mean, I think you guys know it. I mean, there's no easy silver bullet answer. We have to be very dynamic and really figure out what works best for our community and our co-op and individual members. And there's no one answer, but I think we are, as a co-op, are going to be open ears and figure out the best approach for our members. No question about it. So thanks for your engagement. Thanks for really paying attention to our, our rate analysis going forward.
Okay. Chris, do you have any others out there?
I think unless Chris, you wanted to comment too, or if any other members want to make a comment that are in the audience right now, we usually reopen it up for at this end of the meeting time. I know a couple of you came in late, so this could be your chance. I know Chom asked about how much Switch It Up funds we have total. So we got 46.8 and 29 million is remaining to lend out to the members. So that's right. And if you were interested in how much an individual, we usually, our cap is 100,000 per membership. So,
but very few, Krista, very few people have borrowed as much as that, right? That's
very few.
Really
There's been a couple that have done that, and a couple that have even gone a little, like some commercial accounts that have done
commercial
that.
projects.
But yeah, no, we've been really happy with where we're at. And we have about 10 years to use the funds, but they're 3 different grant cycles, so it's a little confusing on which.
Well, we've been talking about tracking it a little bit differently. You guys are going to see some better metrics on what you're asking about, Mark. I think the more clarity we have on that, what our plan is if this project is the only one that I know of that, there's one thing to say the price of power is going up. It's another thing to have a solution that you could recommend to the members to say, hey, why don't you get more efficient? Here's a way to do it. So love this program. And it's really, what my hope is that when we get, the reason we're going to track it so definitively is when we get closer to using up these funds, I want to make sure that we submit another large application into RUS to up these funds again before that program goes away.
Chris wants to make a comment. Go ahead, Chris.
I just had a kind of a follow-up question on the heat pump and wood stove comment that Chom had made, and that is here on Lopez, my experience is that wood stoves and heat pumps are often used in combination, and they're while chopping wood and so forth is a lot of work, it's also something that's appreciated on really cold winter nights, and also has a really strong resilience value where if there's a power outage, people have the ability to stay warm, which they wouldn't be able to do if with their heat pump. So I'm just wondering, does the heat pump rebate switching out from a wood stove require the removal of a wood stove, or does it allow for kind of parallel heat sources in a house?
No, that doesn't require you to remove in fact, I have a wood burning stove I haven't used in years now.
Yeah, me too.
I still like it. It's nice to have as a backup.
Okay, thanks.
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, all it requires is that you have a licensed contractor signed up to install the heat pump, right?
Yeah, it's really easy.
We have one that's specific to if you're fuel switching. So, but I don't think we go in and check to make sure that you've pulled the propane stove or whatever. It's just
or removed a baseboard heater. We're not checking that stuff.
Yeah.
And what you see is it's so efficient that you don't have to chop the wood and so forth, that people automatically use it. So that hasn't been an issue.
Right. No, it's a great kind of combination where you get the resiliency of if you need it, but the convenience and efficiency of the heat pump.
Yeah, I know the technology's increased dramatically, Chris, which I know you probably know. The original one I had was a ducted system, and then when I got the latest one, I was shocked on how well it worked in colder weather. It was good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, very good. I think that's it for now. So we'll close out the regular session at this. It's 9:53. Let's take a break till 10 after 10, and then we'll reconvene.